Hey, what is up? Welcome to this episode of the Wantrepreneur to Entrepreneur podcast. As always, I'm your host, Brian Lofrumento, and this is an episode that I've been so excited about because today's guest really brings the energy. She's absolutely incredible in all the things that she does. She's very used to speaking to crowds all across the country, and the topic is all about curiosity. Let me tell you about today's guest. Her name is Gretchen Wilson. Gretchen is a seasoned professional with a diverse career spanning the public and private sectors, marked by her unwavering commitment to economic development and business expansion. Sounds exactly like the tune that all of us want to sing, doesn't it? Her unique transdisciplinary experience in large organizations and startups has made her a leading advocate for cultivating curiosity among today's leaders, allowing them to harness the untapped potential of their organizations. Gretchen is co-author of the book Launch, 11 Key Elements of Wildly Successful Startups, published in 2021, and she now speaks to organizations and industry groups on the lost art of curiosity in leadership. This is going to stoke some fires inside of you that are going to serve you along in your own entrepreneurial journey. So I'm not going to say anything else. Let's dive straight into my interview with Gretchen Wilson. All right, Gretchen, I am so excited to have you here on the show. Welcome to the Wantrepreneur to Entrepreneur podcast.
Well, thank you very much, Brian. I am really psyched to be here.
Heck yeah, likewise. I don't know how you're psyched. You're living in Massachusetts. It's freezing up there. You and I were talking about this off the air. You're way tougher than me. So take listeners beyond the bio. Give them that backstory of who the heck is Gretchen? How'd you start doing all these amazing things that you get to do today?
Oh, absolutely. So just a short span of my journey. My career started out in upstate New York in economic development. And I was working in the public sector, working in grant-funded programs with economically disadvantaged adults and students actually at risk of dropping out of high school. And I had always known that I wanted to work in the business sector. And so one day I just made the decision to up and move to Boston and started my financial service career in corporate financial services. So as opposed to going deep in any one discipline, I really have always been curious, and I wonder how everything comes together. And so while I got my start in financial services, in a service area, talking to customers and financial advisors on the phone, I quickly moved around and really started a career of the transdisciplinary, as you had heard. And to me, the difference between transdisciplinary and multidisciplinary is oftentimes in a multidisciplinary, you're going and you're learning these functions individually. In transdisciplinary, it's all in an effort to understand how everything comes together and works together as a whole that's greater than the sum of its parts. And so I worked across sales and operations and product management and product development, intellectual property, technology. I ran the gamut. And then after over 20 years in corporate, I got out of corporate. And I knew that I needed to keep learning. And so I got into the startup world 11 years ago and have never looked back. I have used my curiosity. My first startup, actually, I got out of the financial services business, but went right to another heavily regulated business, the world of craft beer. So that was a tremendous experience. It was building a business together with a founder from the ground up. And I learned a ton, had to overcome just incredible obstacles. And then along the way, I went back to consulting with large companies, could really then see how curiosity was non-existent or could actually fall by the wayside, that as companies were growing, curiosity was falling by the wayside. And over the past few years, I've decided to do something about that. And so I want to be certain that everyone knows where curiosity fits and how important it is and imperative to remain to build a successful business and to remain a successful business. So that's where we are.
I love that overview, Gretchen, because I'll be honest, we love a non-linear story here on the Wantrepreneur to Entrepreneur podcast. It's true for so many of us as entrepreneurs, and it's always really encouraging because my argument is always that when we listen to podcast episodes, when we watch YouTube videos or read business books, it all sounds like it makes perfect sense in the rearview mirror, but obviously along the way, we were figuring it out, taking those unexpected twists and turns. So I love how much those pop up in your story. The other thing, I was waiting to see how long it would take to pop up in what we talk about here today, but you got straight to it. I know how much that philosophy, the whole is greater than the sum of its parts, means to you. You've already dropped it on us today. So before we get into all the good curiosity stuff, talk to us about why that philosophy is so important to you personally, as well as the way that you view business.
Yeah, thank you, Brian. Everyone's heard the quote, or most everyone has heard the quote. And whenever you talk to people, everyone will agree with that quote. The whole is greater than the sum of its parts. Yeah, I can agree with that. But when we get down to it, what does that really mean? And so what I experienced when I worked, particularly in large organizations, was I was one amongst a bunch of parts. And so my leadership endeavor when I was in those positions was really to get people to understand more of the whole, the purpose of the organization, what different areas did, who different people were, to develop those relationships and give people that opportunity to see the cohesiveness as to how everyone contributes to a successful organization. And if you step back, though, and you think about it from an individual perspective, we ourselves oftentimes feel very scattered. Our lives feel very separate. When we're in school, every subject is separate, and no one is teaching us how these subjects all come together so that we can best make use of them and bring them forward. So, for instance, my English teachers never talked about why math was important. And physics never talked to me about why English was important. And so these were all things that I needed to learn and discover for myself. And what I realized is that once you endeavor to go down this path, you really, using your curiosity, you can really bring things together much more holistically and realize opportunities that are just beyond anything that you'd ever imagined. So I think that it's just, if we can keep the whole in perspective while also tending to the parts, it makes for a much better and more successful and joy-filled organization.
Yeah, Gretchen, I really love your emphasis on curiosity. This is something weird that I do every year is I just sit down and I'm like, what are the ingredients of a successful entrepreneur? And I always come up with a different list. A lot of times, like, delusion is for sure on that list because we have to believe that something's going to work out when we have literally no evidence that it's going to. And curiosity is that one thing that always does appear on that list for me, because I feel like us as entrepreneurs, a lot of entrepreneurs and especially wantrepreneurs will say to me, they'll say, oh yeah, I love learning. And it doesn't matter what we're learning about. We genuinely love the art of learning because we are curious people about all the things. And it's when we can build those bridges and apply it to the different things. Like you said, a math teacher reminding me why English is important or physics is important. That's a super strong bridge to create in my own mind. Why curiosity for you? Where's that born from? What's the first time that you started thinking, wait, curiosity, that's that one trait that we need to talk about more, we need to foster more in business leaders, and we really need to bring to the forefront?
Sure. Well, in a lot of the leadership training that I had and the leadership books that I was reading, we talk about imagination, we talk about creativity, we talk about innovation. And I kept thinking, that is a little bit further down the path. So for me, I was looking for, what is that fundamental? What is that thing that we are all born with that we can bring forward and perhaps just, and as I continued to peel back the layers, what leads to creativity? What leads to imagination? Well, oftentimes it's curiosity. And I think that curiosity is the doorway to so many of these things. And we are all born with curiosity. But ironically, as adults, we attribute curiosity to kids. And as adults and as leaders, we're often forgetting about it. And I think that it is a fundamental source of power in an organization, in a person. It is the way to overcome any obstacle that you face. Curiosity will get you where you need to be. And, you need to be tenacious about it. But curiosity is that doorway. And as soon as that doorway goes away, we're surrounded by walls. And unfortunately, we get trapped by the walls. And that's when it becomes no fun. And I know that many people have heard beating their head against a wall or feel like they're beating their head against a wall. Curiosity can open up that doorway and get you out.
Yeah, I love those analogies. And it reminds me of one of my favorite quotes ever, which is, "You are confined only by the walls that you build yourself," which I think is a really important concept because it is us doing it. We like to talk about these proverbial walls that are holding us back. Those walls are created by us. And Gretchen, listeners have to hear me talk about this every single week here on the show, but I always talk about how we are the ones that are able to get better at whatever it is that we choose to get better at. I always say that most things are a muscle, and with reps, we can become better entrepreneurs. We can become better positive thinkers. When it comes to curiosity, is this a skill? Is this something that we can continue to get better at? And if so, how do we become better at being curious?
I wouldn't call it a skill because I really think it's a trait that we all have. I think that we all start out in life being very curious kids. And oftentimes our curiosity is curtailed, whether that be prior to going to school, whether that be getting to school, because oftentimes we're taught there's right and wrong answers. And that teaches a linear process. What's the quickest way to get from point A to point B? And as you noted, Brian, it's much more nuanced and networked than that. So, but with that, curiosity, it doesn't matter what you're curious about, because this is the most fun part, is that oftentimes being curious about something that is totally unrelated to a problem that you're trying to solve or an area that you work in, oftentimes those can be great sources of inspiration and aha moments that you don't think it's connected, and then all of a sudden you see this connection. And as soon as you start to see these types of connections where you think things are totally disconnected, but take the time to just kind of think about those things and maybe look and see if there is, over time what happens is that you start to see more and more of those connections. And, I think it's interesting too that, neuroscience with brain images and all of these kinds of things, we're beginning to prove these types of things, but you know what? You know these feelings when you have them. And in talking to people about curiosity who have rediscovered their curiosity, it's contagious, and it's contagious within yourself, and it's contagious with others who you surround yourself with. So.
Yeah, really well said, Gretchen. And it's something that I've leaned on the older, the more mature that I get in life and in my entrepreneurial journey is I do take those lessons. So many of my Solo Sunday episodes start out with something I learned over the chessboard or on the tennis court. And that gave me fresh insights that weren't directly in front of me when it comes to my business problems. It gave me an external way to look at those problems. So I love those insights from you. I want to ask you this question because I really like on your website, right at the top of your website, which is truecuriosity.com. Listeners, we'll talk about it again at the end of today's episode, but you have some leading questions. What if? Where else? Why not? Who can? And some of those really spark those threads of curiosity. For me, the older I get, the more I've realized how often I can just say, tell me more. And people will just go in some sort of direction. What are some of those questions for people who have gotten out of the practice since childhood, for example? You already brought that up, is that as adults, we kind of suppress some of that curiosity. What are some of those questions that can help us get more into the practice of bringing curiosity to the forefront?
Well, I think first and foremost, because oftentimes people get stuck with, I can't do this. For one external reason or another, I'm not able to do these types of things. And I really think that, oftentimes, if you don't explore your curiosity, that can be an excuse. And so why not me? And so, when you look at people who are trying to solve great things, why not me? And, it is, who else is doing this? Taking a look at what people are doing, not for comparison, but just to see, curiously enough, how have they charted their own course? And I think that, once people start to take these questions into consideration, another great point that I really just want to bring up is that there's been research done that shows, if you sit in the same setting, so you go sit in your bedroom or in your office at your desk, those walls that we create, Brian, that you had noted earlier, those mental walls we create for ourselves will keep our curiosity and our imagination limited. And so to get outside where there's no, if you will, physical boundaries, where you're taking a walk, and oftentimes people will profess taking a walk in nature, just allowing your mind to wander and to look around, where you do tend to let your mind go, and you can start to ruminate on just one question or a couple of questions. Why are things like they are? And just getting into that different setting can often open up, again, aha moments and sparking little insights that then it's like pulling on a red thread, and you just want to keep pulling, because once you get going, there's this insatiable appetite that you know that there's always more to know.
Yeah, I love the way you say that. And especially because you are obviously so passionate about this topic. And what I love about your passion for curiosity is that you also cross that bridge into the world of business and leadership and especially growth. And a lot of listeners, whether they're in the entrepreneurial phase still or they're full-blooded entrepreneurs, they might be thinking, well, Gretchen, how's this going to apply to my business? Is it going to help me find more answers? Is it going to help me become a better boss to my employees as I grow my team? Give us some of those insights into the world of business for listeners here today.
You know what? Absolutely. Thank you, Brian, for that question. Will it help you? Yes, it will help you. It will help you immensely. First and foremost, it will help you with your own sanity. Brian, I was listening to one of your prior episodes. I believe it was with Kevin Kate. And there was the talk about the side hustle and the grind and really grinding it out and grinding it out and grinding it out. There's so much burnout amongst founders. But, when you look at, again, tying back to the whole is greater than the sum of its parts, it's being whole is all about how you show up. And so when you show up as a better version of you, whether it's getting sleep, whether it's getting exercise to release some of that, pent up energy, whether it's learning more, because curiosity not only gives you, you learn more things, but it also gives you more courage, because the unknown becomes the known. And the more that you're making the unknown the known, the easier it is to keep doing that. And the other thing is that from a trust perspective, and again, this is from research, is that when you lead with curiosity, you encourage others to have more collaborative and trustful relationships with their colleagues. So you're actually inspiring people who see you leading with curiosity, and you're giving them permission to do the same thing. And so there are so many byproducts. There is, when you're curious about someone else, they are so much more willing to help you, because being curious means you really want to know what they think. You really want to know what they know. And it values them and their contribution. And so I'll be honest with you, I could go on and on and on, but from a business perspective, curiosity is fundamental, not only to the creation, but to the continued success of an organization. And if you continue to be curious and center that around the purpose of what you are bringing into the world, you will be successful.
Yeah, Gretchen, there's a point in there that you made that I find myself saying so frequently the exact opposite of what you just said, but you're really selling me here today. So I always tell people that I'm really lucky. I started my first business when I was 19. It was the summer after my freshman year in school in Waltham, Massachusetts, right near where you're based. And that summer, I didn't know what I didn't know. It's like that phrase, ignorance is bliss. I wasn't afraid because I was young and naive, quite frankly. And I'm very lucky that I was in that position because, the older older we get, for example, my niece and nephew will be like, Uncle Brian, jump off this slide. And like, now I'm aware that I have knees and joints and other things in my body. And I'm like, no, I'm not going to do that. Are you guys crazy? But what you just said, and really the message I'm getting from you, is curiosity also gives you courage. And where my head goes when you say that out loud is, yeah, if I've seen something before, time and time again, whether it's directly correlated to this or not, I'm going to be more comfortable with it. And when we talk about comfort, Gretchen, you and I, we both do public speaking. And when I think back to, people always say to me, I'm sure you get this too, people are like, I hate public speaking. It terrifies me. Well, it once upon a time terrified you and I, but we've just seen it so many times. We've done it so many times that it has become our new normal. Talk to us about that, because I think there's such a powerful lesson in that concept that you're introducing us to of, yeah, the more times you see it, it's just, you start adding it to your repertoire. Gretchen, you must have a huge wealth of knowledge and experiences and perspectives in your repertoire that comes through just that basis of curiosity.
Yeah. Brian, I want to go right to where you just went to, the public speaking. Founders oftentimes are getting themselves into pitch competitions where they need to get up on stage. The thing to remember, and I will say I took a tremendous professional public speaking course, heroic public speaking. And, the reminder that came from this class was, if you are up on stage and you are scared to death and nervous, you've made that all about you. And so it's the questions that run through your mind. Do I look okay? Am I smart enough to be up here? Are people going to think that I'm funny? All of those types of things. And, really it's a mindset shift. And I know that you talk a lot about mindset shifts, but it's a mindset shift of, I am here because other people are looking for different perspectives. And I've been invited to give a perspective that ideally will help many people that are sitting in an audience. You want to be of service to the audience. And I think it's the same way as a founder. When you are going after something, to develop the curiosity and then the courage to go forth with it, it actually, you're doing it in service to someone else. And when you remember those types of things, being a founder is not all about you as a founder. It's about the customer that you desire to serve. That's the impact you're making on the world. And we need so many more than those who are succeeding, because we have a considerable failure rate of 79 to 90% of startups. And so the more curious you can be, the more courageous you become, the better able you are to serve the population you desire to serve most.
Yeah, amen to that. I want to echo that point because I think it is so important from an entrepreneurial perspective for every single listener. That point that Gretchen just made is that we often make things about ourselves. I always argue we as entrepreneurs, as business owners, we have an obligation to get good at marketing. Why? Not because we want to run Facebook ads or do email campaigns or whatever it is, but because we have an obligation to serve the people that we're meant to help. So Gretchen, that's one really good mindset shift there of, hey, this isn't about me. This is about the people that I'm serving. So I absolutely love that. I want to loop back because I love the example you gave of simply getting out of your bedroom, for example, and going for a walk. And our listeners love actionable takeaways. With that in mind, what are some of those actionable ways that we can practice? And you said develop that curiosity more. Should we go for a walk every single week and just start asking, hey, why is this set up the way that it is? What are some of those actionable ways we can incorporate this into our daily or weekly journeys?
So a couple of ideas for people to try is, and this is actually a fun thing to try, particularly with people you think you know very well. And so it's an exercise I've done with people in organizations. And so you pair people up and you find three things in common that you didn't know about one another before you started the exercise. And so what that does is, from a curiosity standpoint, now you need to think about the questions that you want to ask and areas. And if it's someone you know very well, it could be a spouse, it could be a partner, it could be, your mother, your father. You will find that there's things that you didn't know about someone who's that close to you. Now think about doing that with people that you don't know as well. And think about what that can do for relationships, either for you working together with someone that you just started working with, whether that be some type of a customer relationship and how you better understand the customer and what they need. It's all of those things. Another thing is actually taking field trips. So carving out a couple of hours each week and going to a different place. And so whether it's to an art museum or places that you wouldn't ordinarily go to, just to sit and observe, or, maybe it's a coffee shop that's out of the way, just to go listen to what's, conversations are taking place, who's coming in, just observing those types of things. Taking a walk is always, a good idea. And then one other one that has come up more and more I'm seeing is people learning to journal. And I find that journaling for me is done best in the morning. But when you get up and you carve out a little bit of time in the morning for yourself, I just take a spiral notebook and I just start to write. And it's whatever is flowing into my head at the time, and just to see where it takes me. And it always takes me down these curious paths. And sometimes I'll give myself writing prompts, and sometimes I'm just stuck on, I really don't even know what I want to think about right now. But that type of a practice actually opens up things and gives me ideas and inspiration about where I might want to look next.
Yeah, I love those examples, Gretchen, especially because one thing that I can't help but notice is how many of your examples you keep bringing up the words client and customers. And I know that that's such a part of the work that you do that you are fascinated and curious by is the customer experience, the client experience. With your CX hat on, that's something that we as entrepreneurs, because we're busy making things about ourselves, we don't always think about our client experience. With that hat on, what are some of those things that you've noticed? I know that when you work with your own clients, you go through their buying journey as the client yourself, and that gives you so many insights. What are some of those things that all of us business owners and entrepreneurs keep missing?
Well, I think that this is, I think, a really key example, because I see something like this happen over and over. So I am a platelet donor at Boston Children's Hospital, and there is a young guy in the blood donor center. His name is Hassan. He is phenomenal. But, one of the issues that the blood donor center has is that they can't get enough people in the seats. And so they are forever doing outreach, trying to figure out how to recruit more people to come in, and whether it's donate blood or platelets or double red blood cells, whatever the case may be. So Hassan said to me one day, I can't deal with the fact that we don't get enough people coming in here. He said, if I could just find somebody to give me the money and then find somebody to develop an app, I know I could bring people in. And I think that this is a path that a lot of founders will follow. I've got the solution. I know this problem. I've got the solution. So I was talking to him and I said, Hassan, how do you know that the app and what you put in that app is the solution? I mean, how do you know that people are even aware that there is a need for blood as much as there is? How do you know that they're not afraid of needles? So no matter what you put in an app, it may not be of use. These are the things in a customer discovery that it's not just this prescribed list of questions, that it's actually a discussion so that you can uncover the aspirations and motivations that most oftentimes a customer is never going to articulate directly to you. And so you have to learn the art of having that conversation and being able to extract the information, which then allows you to go and create a solution that is more apt to fill the need. Because ideally, as a founder, you want motivated buyers. You don't want to sell people anything. But a motivated buyer means you have to understand their motivations. And oftentimes they can't tell you that. And so that's why there is an art that goes with this customer discovery process that it needs to be followed in order to have the best chance of success for, bringing your purpose forth.
Yeah, I love that real life example for sure, because what it really speaks to me and says is, again, it really comes back. I guess this is one of our recurring themes here today, is that it takes the onus off of ourselves, because for us, you keep saying the word conversations. And I think that's so powerful, because it's through these conversations, if we are curious, we'll start finding the answers. We always think we need to be the ones to have the answers, but curiosity guides us to the answers through having those conversations with our customers or our potential customers, our market. So I absolutely love those insights, Gretchen. I will say I can't have you come on the show and especially have that book behind you on the bookshelf. It's called Launch 11 Key Elements of Wildly Successful Startups. I can't have you on and not ask you for a little bit of a teaser, because that's exciting. 11 elements of successful startups. Give us a little bit of a teaser of what's in there.
Yeah, this book really was born out of a co-founder and I. We had combined experience of over 65 years of combined experience in both large and startup organizations. And there was so much to be learned. Lingo, all about fundraising, all of these different things that we had to learn along the way. And so what we said was, what we wanted to do was put a book out here that is very conversational. It's very quick read, and gives these real life examples, from our experience, just to try and give people a leg up and to demystify some of the things that when founders are going into it, it's not only are they trying to get things started, they're trying to learn all of this jargon and navigate all of these different things. And it's just an effort to give people, like I say, a little leg up going into their journey.
Yes, I love that. Listeners, we're going to drop the link to Gretchen's book in just a minute. But before we get there, it's my favorite part of every episode. And the onus is you now, Gretchen. I get to check out for this one and ask you, what's the one takeaway you hope every listener, whether they're a wantrepreneur or an entrepreneur, we talked about so many amazing things today. Of course, one of the big takeaways is be curious. But what's the one thing you hope every listener walks away from today's episode with?
So, I really hope that all listeners are left with, what makes a whole greater than the sum of its parts, and the curiosity around those things. And so whether you are talking about a founder is an individual or any individual, what makes me feel whole? What are the things that I could explore that are of interest to me? And, looking at through that same lens with respect to your organizations, particularly as you grow your organizations and as you add people, it's imperative that people don't come in and feel as though they're parts in an organization, because parts, when you're a part, right? When you are a part, you're a part. Separated from one another. And I think that that's the hardest thing to really keep an eye on. But if people could do that and use their curiosity all centered around serving the customer, everything else will play itself out just fine.
Yeah, really well said, Gretchen. I love that advice that you're leaving with us here today. Obviously, I've been teasing your book and your website throughout today's episode. I want you to drop those links on us. But before you do, I just want to toot your horn a little bit, because I absolutely love your branding. I love your website. So listeners, if this is speaking to you here today, hearing Gretchen talk about curiosity and you want to go deeper, her website is not a self-serving website. It's not just a brochure of, hey, here's what I do. It actually inspires you. Headlines on her website, for example, are be forever curious, with those example leading questions. Why be curious? She talks about that, how to spark curiosity. She's got great quotes along the way, which all of you listeners know how much I love quotes. So with that said, Gretchen, drop those links on us. Where should listeners go to learn more about you and all the great work that you do?
Yeah, please go to truecuriosity.com. And if anyone wants to reach out, you can reach out to me through the website. There is a contact email that you can send. Please note, if you are going to reach out, just please note that you heard me on the podcast. You can also find me on LinkedIn. Again, please feel free to reach out. And my email is gretchen@truecuriosity.com. So if you want to just come direct, please do that too.
Yes, listeners, do not be shy. You see how generous Gretchen is with all of her insights and experiences and her approach to help you leverage curiosity to unleash your own growth and transformation in your business as a leader. Heck, in life, all this stuff extrapolates there. So check the show notes wherever it is that you're tuning in. You'll find a link to Gretchen's business website, which is truecuriosity.com. We're also linking to her book as well as her personal LinkedIn down below. So check those out. And Gretchen, on behalf of myself and all the listeners, thanks so much for coming on the show today.
Thank you, Brian. Stay curious.